Times Off-Grid Survival Living. My name is Rhonda Byrice. This episode is sponsored by the Arc of Sustainability, a boot camp experience that is off-grid out in the wilderness. If you think that you've got things going on in your life that you need to sharpen your skills, well, this could be the place. It's a hands-on, interactive boot camp where you get to do the work and learn first hands-on, first way, right at the first of your fingertips, being able to do what you do best, learning and understanding all things that are going on at this time in Earth's history. Again, my name is Rhonda Byrice, and this show today is Prepared to Stand. Our guest today is Mr. Jim Buller. He is a director for the Prepared to Stand Ministries, which provides teaching, training in practical Christianity, end time prophecy studies, no buy, no sell country living, and wilderness survival. His personal mission is to prepare a people to stand in the great day of the Lord. Welcome, Jim, to this episode of Prepared to Stand.
Hi, Rhonda.
It's really great to see you. I'm so excited that you're here with us today. And I just want to just kind of things that are going on right now in Earth's history is like we've got wars and rumors of wars. There's Russia and America and China, all these things,
Oh.
kingdoms against kingdoms, so much going on. What do you have to say about that?
Well, you kind of quoted that verse from Matthew 24. Let me go ahead and read it here.
Excellent.
It's Matthew 24, verses 6 through 8. It says, "You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in divers places. All of these are the beginning of sorrows." This is a very interesting verse in that it's part of that great end time prophecy that Jesus gave in Matthew 24. And it says that all of these things, the wars, the famines, the diseases, and the earthquakes, that these are all he calls them the beginning of sorrows. Now, that word sorrow is an interesting word. It's actually a direct reference to birth pangs, as it's used in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 3. There's another word that's translated, from that same Greek word, and it obviously means birth pains, especially from the verse in 1 Thessalonians. And so if we consider these things as birth pangs, that tells us three really important things. Number one, it says, these are the beginning of the end time birth pangs. That means there's going to be other things besides that. And so I'm condensing, a lot of study here, but that means we can also expect that in addition to the wars, famines, diseases, and earthquakes, we can expect that there will also be civil unrest, such as riots and shootings, even civil war, also an increase in violent crimes, fires and floods, and other types of disasters as well. So that's the first thing that this tells us. These are just the beginning. The second thing that it tells us is, like, how do birth pains happen? Just think a minute about that. A lady goes into labor and she's having labor pains, and the labor pains, they start increasing in frequency and intensity. And so because they're birth pangs, once she goes into labor, I mean, that's it. Things aren't going to get any better until she gives birth. And so we can expect that these things are going to continue to get worse until Jesus comes, because they're called, the birth pangs of the end times. And for me, this gives me more assurance that Jesus is coming soon than all of the speculation that you hear about certain current events and stuff like that. Just looking at it all together and realizing that all these things are indeed happening, and that they are indeed becoming more frequent and more intense already.
Yes.
And so, I'm just getting attacked by some dogs here. Come on. So, go on. Yeah, you hear the goat in the background too. Lie down. Lie down. No, I'm
You're
not going
certainly out in the wilderness.
to. Okay. No. Okay. So these things are just going to get worse until Jesus comes. Now, what we need to be really careful here is that we don't let our normalcy bias kick in. This is kind of a natural human tendency that we all have. And I looked up the definition for normalcy bias, and it was really clinical. And so I tried to calm it down a little bit. But basically, this is referring to our natural inclination. So, like the way that we mentally process the information. And it leads us to disbelieve or minimize threat warnings. So, I
Mhm.
mean, these verses are actually a threat warning from Jesus, right? He's saying this stuff's going to happen and it's going to be like birth pangs. It's going to be more frequent, more intense. It's going to get worse. And so this is, that type of a threat warning. And therefore it causes us to underestimate like three things. The first one is the likelihood of disaster. It's like, it's not really going to happen. We're just
Mhm.
tempted to think that way because that's the way we're wired. The second one is when the disaster might affect us. In other words, it's not going to happen now. And the third one is the potential adverse effects of a disaster. It's not going to be that bad.
Mhm.
Okay. But frequently it is. I mean, especially the people that are going through it, you
Right.
know, and because of this, all of this normalcy bias thing, this causes us to not adequately prepare. But here, Jesus himself has warned us that these things are going to happen. So like, what can we do to prepare for these things? Now, just looking at that list, that I gave here just a minute ago, I'll read it again. Okay, the wars, the famines, the pests, the diseases, or like epidemics and earthquakes. There's also going to be like civil unrest, such as riots and shootings and civil war, and increase in violent crimes and fires and floods. A lot of these things are going to require an evacuation of some sort.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, just looking at our own experience, we've had to evacuate twice now from the fires here in California, and have learned a lot in those experiences. And, but the interesting, I mean, because of what Jesus is saying here, we've kind of been ready for that. And so, like some people, if they're not ready, you get totally freaked out and they're like, what do I even do? Because this is so out of the normal for them. But like the second time, it was we just hooked up our RV and left. I mean, because that we were set up to be able to do that at that point. And
Wow.
so, what Jesus is saying here, like going back to what he said in that verse, I want to reread it here. It says, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars," and the very next thing he says there is, "See that you're not troubled." Okay. So Jesus
Right.
doesn't want us to be troubled by these things. In other words, if we're not going to be troubled, we need to expect them. Okay. Believe him that they really are going to happen. And we look around and we're seeing it happen. May happen to us from time to time, but definitely happening to other people. The people over in Syria and Turkey, I mean, they're right in the middle of it right now.
Right.
And other places around the world are, experiencing other things. And so we need to be careful that we're be ready for it so that we're not troubled and we're not surprised by it. In other words, be ready to evacuate. Okay, have your grab and go bag ready. Have your stuff together. There's some very good websites. I'm thinking of ready.gov in particular. Tell you what to do, what to get together for an evacuation. Do that, and then look at their list, but also think about your own personal needs and the needs of your family and what you might need to add or subtract from their list based on that, and just be ready to go. um, and that's going to mean a little bit different for different people, but we could talk more about some generalities there if we got time.
Sure. One of the things I just want to cut in on you right there is, when people have their bug out bag or their bags or go bags and they're prepared, they become an asset and to
Oh
themselves and
yeah.
those around them, instead of, being a problem or a hindrance to those around, because people.
You just all of a sudden frozen time.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh, there you
Okay.
are again. Yeah, you just froze in time there. That was weird. Okay, where were you? Talking about being an asset.
Yeah, they're an asset to their community if they're prepared, opposed to being a hindrance in the scenario. Because as you're saying,
Yeah, you froze again. Anyway, I'm just going to go on. That's huge. We need to ask ourselves: are we going to be an asset or a liability? That's the way I put it, based on a talk a friend of mine gave once. And in every situation, like we're either an asset or we're a liability to that situation. And so, yeah, if we're prepared, then we're in a position where we can help others, and as well as taking care of ourselves, rather than being the ones that need to be taken care of. So, just looking at Scripture as a whole again, Jesus wants us to would want us to be an asset, and then that's one of the reasons he's telling us about these things that are going to happen, so that we can know what to prepare for and how to prepare.
yes. So as we look in also with the time and futures and things that are going on, as we see a lot of the, I guess, confusing things that are happening all the way around us, it seems to me what is good is evil and what's evil is good, and it's rising like unbelievable. People are just in disbelief of all the situations around us. What do you think about all that?
Oh, that's just part of the overall craziness.
Yeah.
And that's the underlying cause for a lot of these disasters, especially the ones that are caused by humans, rather, such as wars, and so on, rather, and the civil unrest, as opposed to the ones that are more natural, what we consider more natural disasters.
Mhm.
So I'm going to come back to I've mentioned three things, and I didn't finish the third one, and so let me catch that one really quick before we go on. Um, and so we need to ask ourselves, okay, are these things indeed becoming more frequent and more intense? And I think the answer has to be an obvious yes. And so, if so, then we need to recognize that the end time birth pains have indeed already begun. And
Yes.
that's a major mental switch, okay, where okay, things are no longer going to be normal or go back to normal completely. Okay, things are only going to get worse until Jesus comes. And we are in that time. For example, when a pregnant lady goes into labor, what do? You don't just sit back and keep going what you're doing. It's time to take some immediate action.
Yes.
Okay, and that's where we're at in Earth's history too. By the fact that these things are indeed becoming more frequent and more intense, lets us know that we are indeed in the end time birth pangs. That's only going to end with the full on time of trouble, as it's been prophesied, and Jesus coming at the end of it all. And so that's where we're headed. And just to recognize that, again, it's that mental shift. Okay, I'm not working now towards getting set up or planning to have a brilliant future. I'm planning on things going down the tubes until Jesus comes. And so we need to be ready for all of that, especially for him coming.
Part of your teaching is no buy and sell and country living. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, because that figures into this whole thing.
Mhm.
Let me back up just a little bit, um, and go back to the what we were talking about there in Matthew 24. There's another parable that Jesus gave in Matthew 7, the last part of Matthew 7. It's a very well-known parable about the wise man who built his house on the rock and foolish man who built his house on the sand, right?
Right.
And we have a hard time understanding the foolish man because we know the end of the story, right? So it's like, I don't care what his reasons were. And I mean, he must have had some good reasons for building on the sand, maybe even compelling reasons to build there. But for us, because we know the end of the story, it's like none of that even matters, right? It's like, why would you do this? This is the stupidest thing you could do. It should be obvious to you. And to put that together with almost a challenge that God makes in Isaiah of, let's see, I want to say 46, 9, and 10, where God, like, again, throws out this challenge, like, who else can do this? Because I'm really the only one that can. And he's referring to being able to foretell the future, him knowing the end from the beginning. And so God knows the end of the story. And so, from the perspective of the end of the story, what's wise and what's foolish is really obvious. And so, looking at that list I mentioned earlier of the different types of disasters, starting out with the wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, and then going on into the civil unrest and fires and floods and so on. If you look at that, and I'm not going to take the time to go through it here, but like make a chart and list those things down. And then just make 2 columns after this initial list and say, okay, where would the obvious wise place to be living during one of these types of disasters? And where would the obvious foolish place to be living during these disasters? And the interesting that comes out is for every single one of them, okay, the obvious foolish place to be living is in the city. Okay, if there's a war, because that's where they're fighting, right? That's the city. That's what they're fighting over. If nothing else, you're going to get caught in the crossfire. Okay, and just something. If there's a riot, again, that's where it's happening. Okay,
Mhm.
and so on. And so that's the obvious foolish place to be living. And so where's the obvious wise place to be living? Well, it's basically in the most out of the way place in the country that will work for you, where you can grow your own food. Okay, there's a famine. You don't want to be in the city, too many mouths competing for too few resources. But out in the country, okay, you're able to raise some food and have your own. Okay, also make your own stuff. There's a lot of skills that we need to learn. Um, and so during this, like, again, the Bible's prophesied this. And also in Revelation 13, it talks about a time is coming when those who stay true to God will not be able to buy or sell.
Mhm.
So anticipating that, getting set up out in the country, an out of the way place in the country, not like in between 2 big cities, in case they're fighting, right? So like an out of the way place in the country where you have an independent source of water, and you can raise your own food and get yourself set up where you can make most of the things that you need. Okay, just think about that as opposed to, if your family was set up in that type of situation, as opposed to your family being stuck in the city. There's a really good, I'm sure you can find it online somewhere, but I think it was History Channel that did a documentary a while back. Actually, it's been several years now, but it's called After Armageddon. Just search that one down and watch it. And they're basically going through a scenario where they used a pandemic where like 80% of the population was killed off, and just what would happen. And so there's interviews with experts throughout the video, but they have a storyline of a family in the LA basin, and what happens to them as these things that the experts are talking about unfold. Very interesting, very eye-opening.
Mhm.
Uh, and you just realize, the city is not the place to be. Um, and so, I'm encouraging people to get set up in the country, because that's where the obvious counsel from Scripture is.
I think one of the really interesting things is to take action now and get set up.
Oh,
As
absolutely.
we're looking at the situation with the threat of central banking digital currency, where things are monitored. Now is the time to get your ducks in a row, because down the road, who knows what's really going to happen. So
Yeah, it's
I'm
only going to get worse, and it's going to get harder and harder, just like a
this,
lady going into labor, right? It doesn't get easier at all.
yeah,
There's lulls between contractions, and during those times you need to do what you got to do. Okay, but
yes,
overall is, act now. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
act now. Yeah, there's a lot. You've said a lot in all of this. I think with the skills that you have, you teach a lot of people different things. And I've actually been to some of your training. And could you explain some of the training that you do? I mean, we did training with you a couple of times, and I know you're going to be at the Arc of Sustainability teaching. And could you explain some of the things that you teach people?
Um, yeah, I just need to preface that with, since we've gotten older, we've had to slow down. Like the program that where we initially met, I haven't been able to do one of those programs for several years. We had one scheduled for last year, and then we had to evacuate from the fire like about a week just before we did the program. And obviously that didn't come back together for soon enough to do anything. But yeah, so anyway, the different trainings that we do, we try to train people in basic gardening for being able to grow your own stuff. There's other people that do a way better job with that than we do, though. Um, Also, how to make things like turning just wood from out in the forest into useful objects,
Mhm.
basic blacksmithing. These are some of the things that we've done. Also, fiber arts. We haven't done much with fiber arts, but we're encouraging people to do that. We've done a little bit with that from time to time. Just learning how to make your own stuff. And then we've done a lot with wilderness survival, which
Mhm.
is like the ultimate backup, right? If you have to
Right.
leave your country home, where are you going to go? Well, back up into the woods. And so that gets into wilderness survival. And that's probably where we specialize the most. Just, learning like what to put in your equipment, what equipment you need to have, how to use all of the different pieces of equipment. Um, and then doing all of that in a wilderness setting.
And are you not doing one of those in May? You have something like that
Um,
coming up in May, I believe.
No, the program we're doing in May, it's a camp meeting where there's several other speakers in addition to us. And so
Okay.
we're doing a little bit of that, but it's mostly not our program.
Okay. And then you're doing another one in July in
Yeah,
Arizona
right. Well, that's with you folks.
with the
Um, yeah, and we're still working on that schedule, so we'll see how that one actually comes out.
so you do
But
get around the country.
yeah, we have a couple other programs. We have one up in the Spokane area. And that one's still being worked out again. I don't know exactly what we'll be doing there. And then we're going to be doing a program in southern Idaho after that, and then dropping down to your place there in first week in July.
Sweet. Well, I love everything that you're doing. You're quite an impressive, incredible wilderness and prophecy trainer. I've been through some of your training and you are amazing. And everyone that you touch their lives in such amazing ways. I mean, I like to see the joy of people rubbing the little sticks together and creating a fire. And I mean, the joy of people being able to do something very primitive and make it work for today is amazing. I've always said my motto these days is farther we go in the future, the farther behind in history we are
Yeah,
going. It's like
that's a good way of putting it.
new divisions are happening, and it's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
can see it all around us.
yeah.
Your encouragement of, getting ready and getting out into the country and being able to do things. One of the things I think is really important is to know who's got your back and who doesn't, and to be with the
Yeah, you
right
need
people.
community,
You need a big you need a reliable community,
right?
not just community. Because whenever I go into the big city and everything is like gated communities, all I feel is that when the civil unrest goes, it's gonna be this gated community against each other inside, and when they find their strengths, they're gonna be against the
Yeah,
other gated community, and it's gonna be a dangerous place to be. And so you're right, being out in the country and finding a community, having everything ready to go. It's just all those things are just really important, and I'm so grateful that you were able to bring that to light. So if
well,
anybody would
let me
get
just
a
add here just a
sure.
little bit is like everybody needs to have their strengths. I mean, I've been working on this probably most of my adult life, learning
Mhm.
all of these different things. And one thing I have to conclude is that no one person can do it all.
No, I
And
think
and
by
so
yourself,
so you
you're
need, yeah, you need that community. And just want to encourage people not to be overwhelmed, because we've really dumped a lot on people's plate here today. And just pick one thing and become good at that. Be that person for your community. Focus on that to start with, and then as you're able, add to that list of what you're able to do.
Excellent. So if people would like to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Would really encourage people to go to our website. We have a lot of resources there. It's www.preparingtostand.org. We also have a YouTube channel. It's Preparing to Stand Ministries. We have some video. We're working on getting some more out. And then if you want to contact me personally, looks like Rhonda has my email address there at the bottom of the screen. So you can reach me that way too. Yeah, you frozen time again. Hello, I'm here.
Podcast, and I hope and thank you everyone for watching and listening. Have a blessed day.